Welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the 49ers preseason win over the Green Bay Packers. The score was 28-21. For a preseason game, it was really exciting. There's a lot to unpack here, so I want to give my thoughts on the game. We're going to look at a lot of the positives that we saw. There are some negatives or some things we can improve on as we move forward through the preseason and then onto the regular season. Quite a lot to talk about. Let's not waste any time. We'll jump right in. As I had mentioned, the 49ers did beat the Packers 28-21 in Levi Stadium to open up the 2022 preseason, and fantastic game that it was. Now, there's a lot of positives to take away from this. First off, no significant injuries, as we're still waiting to hear an update on Drake Jackson, but it doesn't sound too serious, so that's always a huge plus when you come out of a preseason game and there's no significant injuries. Now, what I do actually want to tackle first is some of the negatives or some of the things that we can look to improve on. So the first thing that I noticed, and despite having a great game overall, with Trey Lance, there were two passes that kind of stuck out to me where I thought it could have been a little bit better. So one of them was a little out pass to Ross Dwelley. Dwelley made the catch, but it was a pretty short pass, and Dwelley really had to kind of reach out and lay out for it. Now, normally it wouldn't be a big deal, but those kind of passes, those short, quick passes, are a staple of this offense. We saw how many times did Garoppolo throw a quick pass to Debo. So not that I'm overly worried or concerned about it, but just something that I'd like to see Trey Lance just kind of get a little bit better at, as you could say, maybe just to look improve in terms of consistency, where it gives the receiver a chance to make a play on the ball to gain yards after the catch. So that's a really one thing that kind of stood out to me. The other thing too was, I believe it was a third down pass to Danny Gray, where Danny Gray had an out route, just threw it really to a point where Danny Gray had no shot at it. Now, I do like the fact that, basically he was really Lance was really throwing for the sideline, so he was trying to make it so either Gray was going to get it or nobody, so I can see that aspect to it. But overall, you'd like to give your receiver a chance to make a play. So ultimately, those were two passes that I think that got away from Lance a little bit. But overall, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, I thought Lance was fantastic last night. Moving on to some of the other, issues or some of the other things that I saw in this game. On the offensive line, specifically right tackle, I thought Mike McGlinchey, clearly he has a lot of rust to knock off. I thought in very limited time, I think he maybe only played the opening series, which was about an 8-play drive, and he did not look good. Gave up a really quick pressure once, and then there was the run where I think Lance tossed it to Sermon, and McGlinchey just completely whiffed on his block, and that led to a 3-yard loss in the backfield for Sermon, and Sermon couldn't do anything about it. So McGlinchey, a little bit worried. I'd like to see him get some more snaps in the next two preseason games. We need him ready for week 1 because the Bears do have a fairly prolific edge rusher in Robert Quinn, and they're going to have Quinn lined up all over McGlinchey unless McGlinchey can show that he can hold up. Now, the other right tackle, Justin School, so he came in the second series and immediately got beat really badly. Forgive the obvious pun here, but School got schooled, and it led to Trey Lance getting sacked. So not ideal. I really am. What's funny is kind of going into the game, I was really, more kind of concerned about the interior of the offensive line heading into the season. Now my concerns are kind of starting to move over to the right tackle position because the interior played really well, and we're going to talk about them in the positives. But overall, right tackle, not a good day for them. Last but not least, in terms of the negatives or things to improve on, I really have to call out Tarvarius Moore, who got beat really badly by Romeo Doubs of the Green Bay Packers. Now, I'm also going to chalk this up to maybe some rust, but overall, he got beat bad on that touchdown pass, and we know Tarvarius is an elite athlete, so maybe it's a case of he's still working himself back from that. But if you see that play, and I'm going to have it shown here, that the receiver didn't do anything special. It wasn't like on Ray Ray McCloud's route where he really just fooled the defender. This was just pretty much a simple go route, and Tarvarius Moore just got lost in it and couldn't, keep up with the receiver. So a little bit discouraging. I'd like to see a little bit more from Tarvarius. Hopefully in the next preseason game, he bounces back. Definitely, a learning opportunity for Tarvarius. But beyond that, I really do think that, the team excelled overall. You'd like to see maybe the rushing yards and the rushing average be a little bit higher. But I think in general, there really aren't that many negatives to take away from this game. I think the team really stepped up. You can tell that there's so much talent on this team. And here's the thing, most of the stars weren't even out there. Pretty much all the stars were not out there. So I'm really, really happy with how the game went. And overall, now we're going to move into the section where we're going to talk about the positives. This is going to be a pretty long section, so stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, let's move on to the positive side of things, and there are a lot of things for us to talk about here. First off, we have to talk about Trey Lance. So he looked in 2 series, he looked fantastic. Besides the 2 throws I talked about, he really didn't put a foot wrong. One of the things that I talked about in my preview, which I'll have the link for that video in the description, is I want to have him show that he has a firm grasp of the offense. So one of the things is getting everyone lined up correctly and getting everyone lined up correctly with time to spare on the play clock. He did both of those things. There was no illegal formations, there was no false starts while he was out there. So overall, got to be really happy about that. And then, of course, some of the plays that he made, something that I was really happy for is that when he did run the ball, he slid. Trey Lance did not take a big hit when he ran with the ball, which is a huge improvement, something very minor to a lot of people, but to me, that meant a lot. And then, of course, the just awesome throw to Danny Gray. That's a throw that, not that Garoppolo can't make it, but in my opinion, if that was Garoppolo, Danny Gray would have had to do like an over-the-shoulder catch and probably fall out of bounds, whereas Trey Lance hit him in stride. I think that combo right there is going to be pretty lethal, and I love that play worked in preseason, because here's the thing, when it comes to week 1, the Bears, when they go to prepare for the 49ers and they see Danny Gray out there, and if he's going on a go route, they're like, oh, we've seen this before. We got to maybe send a safety over there. That'll free things up for Kittle and Debo and Ayuk. So really great to see that play executed well. Now, the other things we want to talk about, which I thought were very positive, a lot of things in the running game. I thought Trey Sermon, although his statistics definitely will not reflect it, I thought he looked a lot more decisive and a lot more explosive. So those are some really positive things to take away from the game there. And really, one thing that I like too is in terms of statistically, Jermichael Hasty and Jordan Mason both had some really solid numbers there. So I think the running back competition is still very much in play. Who's going to make those spots is going to be really interesting to see over the next couple of preseason games. And then once it comes to like final cuts and what have you, I think there's going to be some really tough decisions to make at the running back position. Now, I can't talk about the positives and not mention some of our receivers. So Danny Gray, of course, had the really, really big touchdown catch, showing off the reason why we drafted him, just elite speed. And then also, let's give a shout out to Ray Ray McCloud. Had a number of catches. That touchdown, that was just awesome to see, just that route that he ran. The defender fell down. He was wide open. Easy touchdown. Man, if he can do those things, our offense is going to be explosive as heck all season long. So really happy about that. Now, the one thing with Ray Ray and the big knock on him has always been fumbles, and he did fumble. So he's really, really got to work on that through the next coming weeks, all the way up until the regular season. I really hope that maybe he talks with the running backs coach or with Anthony Lynn, and they're like, what can we do to make you not fumble the ball? But beyond that, I think Ray Ray McCloud had a really, really fantastic game, so can't complain about that at all. Looking at the offensive line, now I talked about the negatives with the right tackle, but the interior, they held up really, really well. And I thought what was also really impressive was the fact that, no false starts, no significant penalties by the offensive line, especially when we look at the interior with Banks, with Brendel, and with Burford. I think all of them looked really well. Banks and Burford in particular, they were mauling guys. I saw Banks getting to the second level multiple times. I saw Burford knocking guys over. So I think, if we can keep this trajectory going, this offensive line could potentially be better than last year. So, let's not discount the fact that just because these guys are young, we brought in Laken Tomlinson, who was not highly thought of when he was getting traded away from Detroit. So, and we made him into a big time, player for the New York Jets. Now we have Aaron Banks and Burford, both looking good. Really, really happy about that. And then, of course, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. Samuel Womack, wow. I mean, not only did he have 2 interceptions, but both of those plays are like highlight reel plays. That first one, wow, it was just a crazy play, and just the ball skills that he has is really impressive, and it's something that we've really been lacking in our secondary. Now, the second interception, that was just perfectly played, and I think when you look at it in real time, he turns his head around and then bam, he just catches it. It was just the ability, the reflexes to make that play were fantastic. Overall, this is a guy who's absolutely going to be, competing for that Nickelback spot right off the bat week 1. Now, I was thinking it may still be the case that, Darkey's Denard, he gets that spot because he's a veteran, but it might just be so hard to keep Womack off the field if he's going to keep making plays like that. Beyond that, I also thought the secondary, the coverage in general was pretty darn good. I thought Ambry Thomas had some really solid coverage out there, so really happy about that. And I think just in general, the depth is really, it's right there. I mean, of course, we didn't have Emmanuel Mosley out there. We didn't have Tarvarius Ward out there. So really got to be happy that a lot of these guys are stepping up, and really curious as the preseason continues to see how these other guys step up. I thought, Kadar Holman, he had some moments that were good, some moments not so great. Same with Lenore, but really happy, with the production that we've seen. I mean, 3 interceptions, gotta love that out of the secondary, especially one that we struggled last year with turnover. So having 3 interceptions, man, really, really good to see. Beyond that, defensively, some things that really stood out to me. Oren Burks, incredibly active. Now, he did have a couple of penalties. He has to clean that up, but he was really active. He was all over the place. Reminds me, of Fred Warner, but like maybe a rookie Fred Warner, in terms of, and now Oren Burks is never going to reach the level of a Fred Warner is now, but just somewhere he's everywhere, making plays, and a sure tackler too. Had some really nice tackles as well. So the other thing too, positive wise, Drake Jackson, man, did this guy look like he belonged. Definitely unfortunate that he hurt his shoulder. Hopefully he's okay, but a couple of plays that he made. So when Jordan Love scrambled out of the pocket and he made that tackle which led to his injury, there aren't that many quarterbacks who are as athletic as Jordan Love. So for him to be able to catch up and make that play, like if that was Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers is probably getting sacked. And then Drake Jackson on that other play, and it's one where Jordan Love was kind of scrambling out and then stops and goes to throw it. And just the athleticism of Drake Jackson to stop, get in his face, and kind of put his hands up. Wow, just like that athleticism is through the roof. And I can absolutely see why the 49ers made him a second-round pick. I think he's going to be a fantastic addition to this defensive line. And look, one of my favorite things, and of course, and I get why the NFL doesn't really like the big hits, but some of my favorite things to see in football games are those big hits. And let's give a shout out to Talanoa Hufanga, who made a perfectly legal hit, but just absolutely laid out the Green Bay Packers running back. Not only that, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, he also made a really, really solid, just textbook tackle as well. Couple of other things that did stand out to me too. We had Kerry Hyder make some nice tackles in the backfield. Kevin Givens made some nice tackles in the backfield. So overall, I think it's really, really, positive. A lot of positives to take away from this game. And I'm really just curious to see how the rest of the preseason unfolds. Will we see any of Debo or Ayuk or Kittle out there? Maybe a little bit. But really, really encouraged by the signs that we saw. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Those are my thoughts on the first preseason game of the year. And a lot to talk about. A lot to cover, so yeah, this video's kind of gone on a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but I'm really, really happy with the results of the game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Let me know what you thought about all the different players who played. I can't really talk about every single guy, or else this video would be going on for hours, but let me know some of the guys who stood out to you, some of the guys you thought maybe could have played a little bit better, who need to improve. And overall, I'm going to leave it there, you guys, but right now I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts. I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side.